After several boring chapters of the My Hero Academia manga, we have finally reached All Might vs. All for One. But with All Might being quirkless, there's no way for him to even put up a fight, or so we thought. Before we get into this video, go ahead and leave a like if you want to see more My Hero Academia content on the channel. Hit the subscribe button as we're currently on the road to 50k, and let's get into one of the best My Hero Academia chapters we've gotten in a while. Getting into this chapter, All Might mentions a name we haven't heard in a very long time. All Might takes us back to his confrontation with Night Eye several years ago when Night Eye told All Might he'd encounter another villain that would ultimately lead to a gruesome death. All Might tells us that with All for One's regeneration, All for One is unrecognizable to him, hinting that this is the other villain Night Eye was talking about. All Might squares up with All for One and hits us with his famous phrase, "I am here." I hate to say it, but this might be the last time we ever hear All Might's famous phrase. Then All Might enters his transformation, which looks to be his best costume yet. His whole body becomes engulfed in the suit except for his mouth, so he can let All for One know that he is still smiling just like his mentor Nana Shimura. We then change scenes and we get to see Officer Tsukauchi's thoughts and feelings on All Might's revival. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, so for now we'll just call him Officer. Officer had already tried to stop All Might once before, as he knows that All Might is no match for All for One no matter what support items All Might chooses to use. To Officer, this is a suicide mission and All Might is getting ready to face his death. Officer even tells his partner to cut the recording feed, as he knows that what we're all about to see is the most gruesome murder of Japan's used to be #1 hero. Before the fight begins, we get to see All for One's thoughts and feelings on the situation. Now this is just me, but if I'm All for One here, I'm not even going to acknowledge All Might. I'm heading straight to Deku and Shigaraki, as I know that All Might would rather die than let me get to them. But even though All for One knows this, he just can't let All Might go. All for One tells us how pathetic of a plan it is, and yet it's still working. All Might is stalling All for One. All for One won't be satisfied until All Might isn't smiling anymore, so he's willing to kill All Might even if it means risking not making it to Shigaraki in time. Then the battle begins as the first attack is launched from All for One. Most of us would expect that this attack would blow right through All Might's armor, but All Might makes it through with the suit protecting him. But here's where we can really tell that All Might is ready to die, as the suit tells him he won't be able to survive another hit. And instead of pulling back or trying to be conservative in the least bit, All Might continues to thrust his way through to All for One regardless of whether the suit will protect him or not. All for One notices that All Might isn't backing down and he looks to deliver the finishing blow. Except this time All Might goes on the offensive. With a combination of Black Whip, one of Deku's powers, and Charge Bolt, one of Kaminari's powers, All Might is able to trap All for One and use electricity to interfere with All for One's regeneration. Then we see All Might use another one of his students' powers, Cellophane, from Sero, which allows All Might to get in close to All for One. All Might has been fighting All for One long enough to know how All for One normally fights. He explains that All for One normally starts off with a clumsy long-ranged attack, followed by weakening his opponent to steal his quirk. And All Might was able to use this against All for One in this battle because, well, All Might doesn't have a quirk. So it basically made All for One unfamiliar with this type of enemy. We go back to Officer, who seems to be just as surprised as all of us readers. This next part of the chapter I really enjoyed, when All Might talks about how he wanted to fight one last time even if he didn't have a quirk. So he relied on one of his partner's daughters, Melissa Shields, who we met in the Two Heroes movie. In the movie, we learned that Melissa is quirkless just like Deku and that she specializes in support items, which is the main reason All Might tasked her with building a special suit. All Might vows to defeat All for One once and for all, and then the chapter ends with All Might declaring Officer as his best friend, and that Officer should know by now that All Might never goes into a fight thinking he's going to lose. An amount of confidence that the #1 hero of Japan you'd expect to have. We can also see All Might using Deku's shoot style, but I can't tell if he's punching All for One or kicking him, so let me know in the comments if you could tell. But before I get into my predictions, I just want to talk about how good this chapter of My Hero Academia was. I feel like for the past month or so, the My Hero Academia manga hasn't been all that good. Toga and Ochiko's battle was super long and boring, and I feel like during that time, My Hero Academia went into the shadows. This is supposed to be My Hero Academia's golden arc as they get closer to the end of the story, but up till this past month, maybe even 2 months, My Hero Academia just hasn't been that good. I think that this battle between All for One and All Might will finally get more people talking about My Hero Academia, which will then lead to the fight that may actually have a chance of breaking the internet, Deku vs Shigaraki. Okay, so chapter 397 is scheduled to release August 21st, as Horikoshi is scheduled to go on break next week. For my predictions, I think that All Might will ultimately end up dying in this fight with All for One, but will end up fulfilling his duty like he always does, delaying All for One so he can't reach Shigaraki in time. There is a chance that All Might can change the future, as we saw Deku change the future during his fight with Overhaul, but I don't think All Might has the fire left in him to defeat All for One. What do you think will happen in the next chapter? Does All Might truly have a chance against All for One? How will support items like All Might's suit affect the next quirkless population? Thank you so much for watching this video. Go ahead, like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.